So everyone at this point knows the Earthbound series, either from playing it when it first came out, emulating it, the Smash Bros series, or on the Nintendo Switch Online SNES. Now, what is interesting is that while Earthbound is widely beloved, it wasn't actually the first game of the series. The first game is called Earthbound New Beginnings, or just Mother, but this video is about the second game. Earthbound is made by Ape Incorporation and HAL Laboratory for the SNES. The development period for this game took 5 years to complete, and apparently upon some research, or just using Wikipedia, this game was under threats of cancellation, and this is also the start of people waiting for the English localization for Mother 3 that to this day has not been released outside of Japan, and the only way people can play it is to download an English fan translation with an emulator, which is honestly baffling that they have not done it, considering that the world of Earthbound takes a Western American-esque style. We start off in Nessa's house, and he wakes up by the sound of a big explosion, so with the yes from our mother, we stroll out to see this meteorite. Further in, Pocky is basically being an annoyance to the police, and so we leave back home. Pocky rhythmically knocks on the door at 4 AM in the morning, which is terrifying if you think about it. He barges in before we even get to open the door, asks for help to find his brother Picky, and in his mind we are best friends. Even though at this point in time I barely know the dude. We suddenly get attacked by a snake on our way out, which is our first introduction to the combat. The combat is your typical turn-based. You choose what the party members are gonna do and then watch it play out. We first start off with basic attacks, but the more the game progresses, the more psychic abilities you will obtain. I also love that each character has their own abilities that adhere to them to make them feel different from each other. Ness has healing spells, but also most of his moves are widespread attacks. Paula uses mostly magic and prayers, Jeff uses gadget items, and Pooh with healing and magic. Normally when you take damage in an RPG, the damage is instant, but here the health slowly goes down, as if it is a countdown, and if you are fast enough you might be able to heal them before they go down, which means you have to plan around the rolling numbers, as bigger spells, while stronger, use more time to complete the animation. There are advantages and disadvantages, as in if you do a back attack on the enemy, you have the advantage and can go first, but also vice versa. Advantageous if the screen swirls green, red if opposite, and grey if head on. The game does give you a slight leeway when it comes to it, since there are multiple times I have been back attacked, but I turn around to face the enemy before the colored swirls arrives. Then I get the neutral grey colored swirl. Defeating enemies also grants you EXP and money, however you do not get money in your inventory or something like that. Instead you have to go to a bank to withdraw, but you have to plan ahead on how much, because if you take out all, and then you get defeated in battle, a huge chunk of it actually disappears. Throughout the adventure you will come across a lot of different items for different uses. However, most of them feels a bit unnecessary and also takes a lot of space, since each character has their own inventory space. So you end up having to throw stuff away, just to get some healing items or stat boosts in combat, or really important items. The story is pretty simple. Buzz Buzz the Bee tells us that the evil incarnate called Gigas is gonna destroy life as we know, and so Ness and a party consisting of Ness, Paula, Jeff and Pooh are gonna go and destroy him for good. However, throughout the story there are multiple statues called Mani Mani, and those make people go crazy when in contact with it, and will use any means necessary to throw out Ness's plans to destroy Gigas, or Gigas or whatever you want to call it. And to do that, Ness and the others have to go to 8 different landmarks for the Soundstone, and each landmark is guarded by different monsters or animals. Defeating each guardian and getting the landmark also makes traveling back easier, since the enemies who are just in your way will run away from you, and I find that pretty interesting. But while the story is simple, it is the journey to get there, and let me tell you that the journey is nonsensical at best, and really unpredictable. As an example, while you're trying to rescue Paula from the blue cultist, the thing hindering you to continue on is a big metal pencil, and you have to get help from Apple Kid to make an invention specifically to remove the pencils, which again, the item is specifically for that, so you just have it in your inventory being barely used, if at all. Or you are in a different world where everything is in neon colors, with invisible walls around every corner, and to get to the Mani Mani statue to remove this hallucinating state is to talk to the guys dressed in yellow. They will then teleport teleport you to different spots in the neon-colored world, or you get to Saturn Valley where the Saturn alien people live and their fonts are barely readable at best, or even a settlement of Tenda tribes and they only speak to you when you have a book for overcoming shyness, or when you meet the dungeon man in the first time when you play as Jeff in the winter and the guy wants to be a dungeon, to then meet him again in the desert as a big dungeon tower and walk around as a fifth temporary party member, and inside him are a bunch of random things and signs meant to communicate to you. Brick Road. Not to mention some of the enemies you may come across, like a pile of barf and puke, crazy people, different aliens, flying lips, or ghosts within a trash can, and many more. Sometimes one of your party members might get cursed, which will stick even after battle, and you need to go to the hospital to get it removed. But while in battle, the cursed ghost will attack anyone in your group. Not a lot of damage, but sometimes they may also freeze one of your groups, which uses a turn just to thaw it. Interestingly, the ghost function as a fifth member, since it will also be affected by a team-wide stat boost. I did want to say that this game's pixel art reminds me of Undertale, but that wouldn't be right, since Undertale took a lot of inspiration from Earthbound. Even a game called Lisa the Painful was also influenced by this game, and I find the art style of it pretty charming, has some interesting character designs and choices, and makes them somewhat memorable, like the Runaway 5, or even a final battle against Gygas itself. However, due to it having a lot of stuff in each city, like NPCs and monsters, sometimes the game slows down to a halt. And I'm not 100% sure if it is my Switch that does it, or if it was like that on the SNES console. It is especially worse when the character does not walk that fast, and while you do get a bike, it can only be used in the first 2 cities, because after getting Paula, well, you might as well deliver it back to the bike rental place. To fast travel to different cities, you have to use the bus, but I would actually prefer it if they did some sort of fast loading screen or something, since we see them travel from point A to B, which takes a while. However, you do get the teleport spell, but what makes this a bit difficult is that it takes a Back to the Future movie approach, where if you have the necessary space, then you can quickly sprint to teleport to any visited locations. Anything can stop it from walls, people, and even enemies. You do, however, get another updated version of it, which Pooh gets first, I believe, but this time they're running in circles. Same concept, different methods. The soundtrack is not your typical JRPG-like music, like Pokemon or Final Fantasy. There's some interesting soundtracks, like most of the battle themes, but also because of the meme music I kept hearing was from this game's bosses, which took me out of left field. And it is a weird boss music, but none come close to this music. Astounding, isn't it? But weirdly enough, I do think that some of the soundtracks are memorable, even if they are not bombastic or epic, if you would. Like, just listen to some of the soundtracks. When it comes to the characters, I found most of them pretty interesting, like the Runaway 5 and whatnot, but that is because in early game, they are always in debt and you have to pay their debts, but they come in when needed, like when you're on a rescue operation for Paula in the Monotoli building, or the monkey that wants to chew on some gum, which also helps you traverse the water with Nessie, or Tessie if you would. Now, I'm gonna be honest here and say that I actually did not care that much about the actual main playable characters. None of them has any dialogue with each other, only one uniting them, but that is about it. I really wish that every so often the characters would speak to each other, because at this point they are just walking cardboard. You could argue about Mario and Link being a silent protag, but what works with that is that they are only one character and not the whole party. And the Mario and Luigi RPGs also work because of the sprite animation that supports their personality. You do not get that in Earthbound, since it has a first-person-esque battle style, and their personality feels a bit like a blank slate. You do get a bit of sense of their battle styles, like how Ness uses yo-yos and baseball bats, and a lot of healing and multi-hitting magic. Paula uses yo-yos and frying pans, with mostly magic. I can also pray for some extra health. Jeff has his gadget and has no psychic abilities, but can fix any broken items as long as he has it in his inventory, has the IQ for it, and sleep, which I definitely need. And Prince Pooh does not use any items, and if he does, then I never actually found it. Uses both healing spells and magical spells. The one character I actually found more interesting was Pookie himself, a rich snobby boy that is always ahead of you and thwarts your advances to stop you from fulfilling the duty. He does have a bully mentality and has a nihilistic type of personality, but I found that more interesting as a character, as he goes from being a snobby kid, then being a rich snobby kid, to then being the one that messes up time and space, which does make sense as a whole, weirdly enough, since he was a kid with not so good parents and felt lonely most of the time, so of course if he had the power and mentality, he would do something like that. The final battle was pretty interesting, so as an extra spoiler warning, when we reach the end and are traveling to a different world with the use of soul transfers, since the main body cannot withstand the travel, the party soul are sent into a robot. When we reach the end, we see Gygas, but you also see Pookie, but this time looks more disturbed and is in a spider mech. The battle is in two phases. The first phase is taking down Pookie, as attacking the main threat immediately will repel the attack back, and that is a deep hatred for Ness. Interestingly, when you battle against Pookie, he runs away before you actually defeat him, which means that you won't turn him normal again, as mostly in battles, instead of the game saying that you KO'd enemy or offed someone, they opted to use phrases like enemy turned back to normal or taming an animal. But after Pookie flees, we get to the next phase, which is hard to describe what the enemy actually is, like it's not a tangible creature, or might be something akin to battling against a void or something, hard to describe. The only way to truly defeat Gygas is to keep Paula alive, since she has to use prayer 10 times, and each prayer shows us a cutscene, where the characters that we met will pray back, and also us, the player, with each prayer distorting the enigma. Also, I'm gonna out myself and say that I did not know what to do against Gygas, and I just wailed most of the strongest attacks on him, since he was susceptible to damage, but nothing worked. So I did use a guide, but in hindsight I should have known, since Pookie does hint at it. Just before the battle, he does this spiel about no one is there to save us, and that the only thing we can do is pray, and I just did not catch on that he did tell me what to do, and I feel dumb for looking up a guide. And the game ends with the party getting back into their main bodies and saying their final goodbyes like, well, gotta go back to school, see you guys. But even though it had some downsides and upsides, I can definitely see why this game is a cult classic, and I'm glad that I played it, and to see the inspiration it gave to other game devs, and that sans would never even existed if this game did not exist. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you are interested in more content like this, then make sure to subscribe, like the videos, and also make sure to write down anything I can fix on future videos. And with that, thank you guys, and I'll talk to you all later.